2024 has been a huge year in the world of diabetes technology, and in this episode, I'm going to be laying out all of the top stories and new tech that has come out this year, whether that be big partnerships between Medtronic and Abbott on a new CGM, Dexcom and Oura bringing CGM levels to the Oura Ring, a huge lawsuit win for Omnipod, CGMs coming over the counter, and a new pump finally bringing DIY algorithm to the mainstream in an FDA-cleared pump. I'm getting into all of these stories and more in today's episode. I also have a bunch of YouTube videos that are explainers that dive even deeper. I'll throw all of those in the show notes. Welcome to the show. I'm Justin. I have type 1 diabetes, and on here I talk all things diabetes tech, news, and management, mostly through interviews, but occasionally we do solo episodes like today. Aside from YouTube videos, I've also dove deeper into some of these stories on the blog, the Diabetic Roundup. You can check that out with the link in the show notes. You can also sign up for our newsletter there so you don't miss all of the new content coming and the biggest news in diabetes tech. Also, it would be greatly appreciated if you fill out our Diabetic 2024 survey. It is in the show notes. I want to hear from you what you want to see more of on the show, the topics, what we could do better, what you like about the show and you want to see more of. It would be awesome if you can fill that out so I can bring all of that stuff into 2025. Some of the companies that I bring up in today's episode, like Dexcom and Omnipod, I work with on sponsored content. In fact, Omnipod sponsors this show, but in no way has that affected my reporting. All right, without further ado, let's get into this episode. Let's start with some recent news, and that is that Dexcom has partnered with Oura Ring to bring their continuous glucose monitor readings into the Oura fitness tracking app. The two have entered a strategic partnership. Dexcom has invested $75 million into Oura's Series D funding round. That is a lot of money, and I have a lot of thoughts on what this could mean. They say that the partnership aims to, quote, help people improve their metabolic health by integrating Dexcom glucose data with vital sign, sleep, stress, heart health, and activity data from the Oura Ring. Interestingly, the idea came from the two CEOs being in a room together, and the Oura Ring CEO was wearing a continuous glucose monitor. Dexcom CEO Kevin Sayer was wearing an Oura Ring, and the two thought, wow, maybe we could collaborate here. But I think that this collaboration is much bigger than just some fun idea, and I'll get into that in a sec. But first, let me explain to you who Oura Ring is. Oura Ring was founded in Finland in 2013. The Oura Ring tracks biometric data like heart rate, body temperature, blood oxygen levels, and sleep. It uses this data to calculate sleep, readiness, and stress, and to provide insights on their users' health. Now, Oura gives these insights by using 3 different sensors. The first one's hard to say, so bear with me. It's an infrared photoplethysmography sensor, also known as PPG. I'm going to stick with that. This is used for heart health and respiration. There's a negative temperature coefficient, NTC sensor, for body temperature, and a 3D accelerometer for movement. Now, why does this partnership make sense? Well, there are 42 different factors that can affect someone's glucose levels, from alcohol consumption, workouts, whether it's weightlifting or cardio, stress. We all know that there's been moments where we're going on stage or we have to do some public speaking and our glucose levels go up. There are so many different factors, and the idea that a fitness tracker like the Oura Ring that has all of these different areas that it tracks can put your glucose levels side by side with that and help you understand what is causing drops or spikes could be very valuable information. I have an Oura Ring myself. I've been testing it out. It is a pretty expensive ring. It's $400, not cheap. That's for the Gen 4. There is a earlier model, the Gen 3, that's also available. That's about maybe $50 to $100 less. But on top of that initial price, there's also a subscription. Of course there is. Imagine if there was a subscription for our CGM, like to get the readings. That's kind of what's happening here is you get the ring, and then in order to truly get all of the insights beyond just some simple stuff, you have to pay a $7 subscription fee. I think that there's also like a $70 subscription for a full year, so you save a little money there. But That's a tough sell for me. $400 is a lot to pay initially, and the idea that I have to continue paying for a subscription is not appealing. What could be appealing is seeing my glucose levels side by side with the Oura Ring stats. I got more into that in my Dexcom Oura Ring video, which you should watch, and I'll throw the link in the show notes. I dive deeper into this whole partnership and what it can mean. I also get into non-invasive glucose monitoring, which I think is part of the reason why Dexcom has invested $75 million into this company, potentially working their way onto a fitness tracker, non-invasive glucose monitoring technology. We see Apple, Samsung, No Labs, who came on the show. There are other companies out there that are working on this technology. And I can only imagine that if Dexcom wants to be a main player for years on, they're gonna have to start looking into that and getting serious. The two companies plan to cross-sell each other's technology. I believe that the main push for Dexcom will be Stelo here, and that Oura will promote Stelo, Dexcom will promote Oura, but I hope that Dexcom also puts emphasis on the fact that people who are using G7, Dexcom 1, hopefully Dexcom G6 as well, can also integrate their readings. Dexcom already directly works with the Apple Watch and Garmin watches and so many other third parties. I would hope that they put an emphasis there as well for people living with diabetes. This episode is sponsored by Omnipod. You guys know that staying connected to the tech world is important to me, but what's also important to me is my insulin pump. Omnipod 5 is tubeless and waterproof, which means I never have to disconnect from automated insulin delivery, even when I take a shower, go swimming, or go to the gym. Staying connected to my insulin pump means I'm spending more time in automated mode, which ultimately helps me spend more time in range. See if you're eligible for a 30-day trial by visiting omnipod.com/diabetic. On there, you'll see full safety and risk information and trial terms. Again, that's omnipod.com/diabetic. Next up, a huge partnership between Medtronic and Abbott. They are working on a new continuous glucose monitor where Libre would produce it and Medtronic would sell it with their line of products. There is not a ton of information here, but basically, here's where we're at with Medtronic's CGMs. The Simplera is releasing around the world. It has approval in the United States. It also just received approval to work with the InPen Smart Insulin Pen. Those two products can be used together in the US. It hasn't yet released, but it's coming soon. There will be another CGM, Simplera Sync, that works with the insulin pumps. That is already finding clearance and becoming available to people, I believe, in the UK. Now, you may be wondering, why is Medtronic working on a new continuous glucose monitor with Abbott when they just released a CGM, the Simplera? Well, it is said, or at least I've been hearing, that Medtronic is having issues keeping its accuracy where it needs to be past like 7 to 10 days. And you have all of these other companies, Dexcom lasting 10.5 days, but they also just put in with the FDA for a 15-day G7. You've got Libre 2 and 3 Plus that both last 15 days. Well, how is Simplera going to be taken seriously when you have all of these other CGMs that are lasting more than double the amount of time? So Medtronic wants to remain competitive here, and in order to do that, it seems like they believe this is the way to do it. So Abbott will be producing these. These will be proprietary continuous glucose monitors. So these CGMs will only work on Medtronic systems, and they'll be sold by Medtronic. Medtronic has always prided itself in, this is an all-in-one system. You only call one company if there's an issue with your CGM and pump. And I hear because of this that their customer service is pretty good. Let me know what you think about their customer service in the comments on YouTube. I can only imagine that this CGM coming from the companies will last 15 days, be closer to the MARD that the Libre 3 Plus has of 7.8%. I believe the Simplera, as it sits, is like 10.2% MARD, which is still good enough for automated insulin and the needs for their systems, but that is significantly higher. MARD is better the lower it is. Now, it's possible that this partnership could go beyond just a simple CGM, but more so Medtronic harnessing Libre technology for other reasons. Medtronic has said, I actually have a visual chart that they've used, I'll put that on screen on YouTube, that they are working on an integrated CGM in an infusion set. So you just put that infusion set on that connects to a pump with a tube, and that infusion set has a CGM in it. So you really only have to switch one thing out to get everything you need with your pump and your readings. That is on their timeline. And with a smaller sensor technology, I mean, that sounds more doable. They've also said that they want to get to an all-in-one pump and CGM. Again, would be easier with a smaller technology. This takes me to my next story, which is that Insulet has officially won its lawsuit against EOFlow, a tubeless patch pump company that was being acquired by Medtronic until it fell through. Here's what you need to know. Insulet has won a lawsuit against this South Korean patch company, EOFlow, with a prize of $452 million, which includes $170 million in compensation plus $282 million in punitive damages. Back in May 2023, Medtronic had announced that they were acquiring this tubeless patch pump company for $738 million. But just a few months later, in August 2023, Insulet claimed that this company copied patent components of its Omnipod devices when designing the EO patch tubeless pump. Insulet alleged that when EOFlow was founded in 2011, it started out with a patch pump that used a different technology than Omnipod to deliver insulin. But around 2016, they said, quote, EOFlow pivoted and launched a plan to brazenly copy Insulet's Omnipod system. In fact, 3 former Insulet executives who joined EOFlow were named as defendants, as was Insulet's contract manufacturer Flex, which also entered into a contract with EOFlow. So it would seem that Insulet was right in this matter, or at least a judge and a jury have said so, and they have been awarded a lump sum of money. Although Insulet has said that EOFlow's ability to satisfy this damage award is not known with certainty. So it's unclear if Insulet will ever see that money, or at least all of it. And of course, Medtronic is no longer acquiring EOFlow. Medtronic said it was exercising its right to terminate its agreement to acquire EOFlow as a result of multiple breaches on EOFlow's part. But Medtronic says it is still working on a tubeless pump, but I can only imagine that is much more far off than it was supposed to be, and that maybe the next tubeless pump we see could be the Sigi from Tandem, or a pump that I'm going to get into later in this episode. But before that, we have got to talk about one of the biggest pump announcements of this year, a pump that is officially coming, and that is the Twiist pump. What is so unique about this insulin pump, it is a tubed pump, is that it brings an algorithm from the DIY space into the FDA-cleared realm for consumers to use a DIY originated algorithm for the first time. The Twiist pump was officially cleared by the FDA in March 2024. It comes from a company called Sequel MedTech that I believe opened up specifically to distribute this pump. And this company sees the Twiist pump, with 2 I's in Twiist, they see this pump as the sequel to another pump that was designed by Dean Kamen. Now, Dean Kamen founded Sequel MedTech, and he also invented the first wearable insulin pump. And now he's coming back into this world to bring a new pump, the Twiist. Oh, and that first pump was called the auto syringe, which I actually saw when I went to Medtronic headquarters. And if you haven't seen my whole video at Medtronic headquarters talking about the history of diabetes tech, well, you've got to see that, and I'll also put that in the show notes because it's probably the coolest video I've ever made. Now back to the Twiist. This pump is using an algorithm called Tidepool Loop. Tidepool Loop is an FDA-cleared version of the DIY Loop algorithm that's still being used widely today. In fact, I'm using DIY Loop at the moment, but Tidepool Loop is like one of the early versions of that algorithm. It's Loop 1.0. Currently, Loop is at like version 3.0. So it has come a long way, but this algorithm that it's using is still very powerful and has some unique features, like its low target. It's a target range, but the lowest part of that target range can be 87 milligrams per deciliter. To compare that, Medtronic has the second lowest target of 100 milligrams per deciliter. So this is significantly lower than that and will help people keep their glucose levels at a lower range more often. The algorithm works on an iPhone currently and an Apple Watch. It can also be controlled from there. You can bolus on the watch. You can put a pre-meal target that brings your glucose levels before you eat on the watch. You can set an override for activity right on the watch. And I got to see the app, the watch, and the pump itself at ADA this year. I have a whole YouTube video about it. I'll throw that in the show notes. I also spoke with one of the leaders of Sequel MedTech on my podcast. I'll throw that in there as well. Wow, you're gonna have a lot of videos to watch after this. But this pump is coming soon. I got an email a few weeks ago saying that they are setting up calls with healthcare providers and patients who are interested in learning more, and that it is coming, quote, soon. The pump is for people ages 6 and up. It holds 300 units of insulin. It's small enough to fit in that coin pocket of a guy's jeans, and it can be worn in a few different ways. It can be adhered to the body with a little bit of a patch similar to the Mobi. It could also be, placed in your pocket. There's also a clip for it. It has a bolus button on the device that you can use to give yourself increments of 1 unit of insulin, all the way up to 10 or your max, whatever comes first. When it comes to hardware, one of the most impressive new features that this pump brings is its ability to detect occlusions 9 times faster than other pumps on the market. The device uses a new pumping mechanism, which uses sound waves to measure insulin delivered. It measures the chamber to see how much was delivered, and it has an early detection of occlusion or blockage. And as an Omnipod user, I will say that I go hours without knowing that there's an occlusion or blockage, and my glucose levels can get really high. And the idea that this can do it 9 times faster is very appealing. At launch, this system will only work on iOS devices, the iPhone, the Apple Watch, but they plan to bring it to Android as well, so I'm hopeful that that happens soon after release. It probably will take a long time though, as we've seen with everything in this world. If you want a full explainer on this pump, let me know in the comments on YouTube and I'll make it for you if enough of you want it. Today's episode is sponsored by T1D Exchange. You can directly make an impact on diabetes healthcare, treatments, and technology by participating in the T1D Exchange registry. It starts with a simple survey about your life with T1D, and it only takes about 15 minutes. After that, you'll have a personal portal with ongoing T1D study and survey opportunities. Plus, some of these studies even offer compensation. Signing up with the link in the show notes helps support my channel, and it allows me to continue putting out free content. You can sign up at t1dexchange.org/diabetic or click that link in today's show notes. Let's get into one of the biggest news and new technologies that I've found this year, and that is the all-in-one CGM and pump. The company Pharmasense, a Swiss company, is already working on this. And I brought it up a few times on this podcast and my YouTube channel, but it is one of the biggest stories, I'd say. So the company is working on a line of pumps. They are called Niia, and the final pump of this line of 3 would be an all-in-one pump and CGM. I got to see the pump in person at ATTD. I put out a video of that on YouTube. I'll throw it in the show notes. And then I got to see prototypes for its all-in-one pump and CGM at EASD, which I also got into on my video from EASD. It is a tubeless pump. It's about the size of an Omnipod, maybe a little smaller in surface area and slightly taller. It holds up to 300 units of insulin, and they're hoping that this pump would be worn for 3 to 7 days. For me, the main draw to this technology is that all-in-one device. Specifically, right now, because of the way our technology talks to each other over Bluetooth, when you go swimming with a pump and a CGM, especially Omnipod because you can go underwater with that, Bluetooth doesn't work underwater. So the idea of a tubeless pump that I can wear and go underwater and not have to worry about Bluetooth signal because it's an all-in-one device that just talks to each other in its own technology is fantastic and something I want to see. Pharmasense showed me 2 prototypes of their all-in-one device. These prototypes were built in collaboration with Pacific Diabetes Technology, also known as PDT, an Oregon startup. The first prototype I saw were 2 separate strands. I saw a sensor and then a cannula, a steel needle that put the insulin in the body. They were side by side. And then the second prototype I saw was a steel needle that was encapsulated by a sensor. So far, they've conducted 2 clinical studies for these prototypes, and they're looking into what accuracy looks like when a sensor, a CGM sensor, is so close to where the insulin is released. These studies have found that if there is a large bolus of 10 units or more, that is when the CGM sensor will read an inaccurate dilution of glucose levels for about 10 to 15 minutes. So there's obviously more testing to do, but an algorithm that is paired with a device like this would have to take information like that into account. Does this happen every time? If it doesn't happen every time, then there's obviously more complexity there. Now, PharmaSense has their technology down, or they have a few different technologies down, but they don't have an app, they don't have software for these devices, and they are looking for partners in that area. There's a long way to go here, but it is cool to see that we are stepping into this next area of diabetes technology, which is just combining our technology. I hate having to wear 2 different devices, and with packing all of these backups for each one. The idea of having one device to rule them all is fantastic, and I'm hopeful for that. Now, lastly, I want to end with kind of this whole idea that CGMs should be worn by more people. And some news that just came out is that the ADA's standard of care guidelines are now recommending that people with type 2 diabetes, even not on insulin, should consider wearing CGM. This means that the people living with type 2 diabetes who are currently managing their diabetes with common medications like metformin or GLP-1s, we have seen an explosion of new CGMs and people who should use CGMs this year. And I think this deserves an entire segment of this video. We've seen 2 new CGMs come over the counter. One, the Dexcom Stelo, that is for people who have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. This is what probably the ADA, an option for these people, the ADA is saying should use CGM. This could be a good option for them. We've also seen a new CGM, the Abbott Lingo, that is for people who don't have type 2 diabetes, which in some ways I'm sure is controversial because people with type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes who need these devices still don't have access. But it is still also going to be very interesting to see all of the data and things that we see come out of that, of people who don't have diabetes using this technology and getting that information. But besides those, we've seen a lot of innovations in the CGM world. Let's start with the Libre 2 and the Libre 3 Plus. The Libre 2 Plus now works with Omnipod pumps for automated insulin. Libre 3 Plus works with Beta Bionics. I'm sure that we'll see, and the Libre 2 Plus also works with the Tandem. I'm sure we'll see the Libre 3 Plus work with more pumps in the new year. We've also seen the Eversense 365, an implantable CGM now lasting a full year. I had leaders at that company come on the podcast to talk about it. This one now only needs 1 calibration a week. It has a new transmitter, some other new updates. That was a fascinating interview, so I'll throw that in the show notes. And then of course, Simplera, Medtronic's new CGM, while it is a little behind, especially with its 2-hour warm-up and 7-day wear, this is a new CGM that people who are using the smart insulin pen in pen or the 780G that they'll have access to. And it's definitely an upgrade over the Guardian sensor that a lot of people are using. So this was a huge year for CGMs, and as you can tell, it was a huge year for diabetes technology. I hope you've enjoyed this big roundup. If there's anything you want me to dive deeper in on my YouTube channel, on the blog, let me know in the show notes. I also have those videos for 2025 coming, the pumps we can expect in 2025 and the CGMs. If there are any big roundup videos that you want me to do on my channel, let me know. I'll be bringing some new guests and some old that you've enjoyed. We have got a lot in store, but I hope that you all have a happy holiday. We don't have any breaks planned for the podcast, so you should expect episodes just throughout your holiday, so you'll have something to listen to. I hope you have a fantastic time with friends and family. Thank you for listening. Please fill out that 2024 survey. It would mean so much. I want to get better. I want the show to be stronger so that you continue to enjoy it. All right, I'm Justin, and I'll see you next week.